destroyed. I'm not sure it made it safer, but then I have already mentioned Gaza, and perhaps one element, I think all that, of course, feeds further animosity and extremism. We have been also quite clear in naming that extremism, and also settler violence. We have been quite clear in our statements, also publicly by the High Rep, but also in New York. So that's always language that is agreed with all member states. We have been quite clear in firmly condemning the settler violence. And we have also discussed it with our Israeli counterparts. Now, maybe I will come to that also when I speak about the parties, but I should mention also the ad hoc liaison committee that took place earlier this month, which always is a good opportunity to look at what is the situation. And we heard quite some alarming comments from all interlocutors, from Finance Minister Bishara, but also UN Special Coordinator, regarding also the very critical situation of the Palestinian Authority in terms of economic and social, but also funding, but maybe also more also in terms of security and control of areas such as Nablus and Jenin. We have also, and many of you have commented on the situation in Israel, which I think would be for a special session. I'm not going to say that much about it, but I think all in all, if you add the challenges on the side of the two parties and the situation of the conflict, I think we have quite a bad mix. Is there anything positive? I think maybe there is, because I think if you asked us in January, February, where we would be at the end of May, I'm not sure what we would have said, but I personally believe it could have been worse, and there have been some efforts to help that, and I want to start with that. So I think if we think about what we are doing and how we are looking at our action, so I would structure it in the following way. So first, support to de-escalation efforts. I think this has been the main theme in the past months. Again, I think in the run-up to the religious holidays, we have been quite clear publicly, but also working with the parties. As you know, we have also, our High Representative is very engaged personally, very much. He's also very much aware of the situation. He has also invited to Brussels Prime Minister Steyer in January. He had a discussion with all the foreign ministers at the FAC. So it was a very important debate, and I will come to that also when I talk more about how we work with the parties. He also had a conversation here in Brussels with Foreign Minister Cohen, and they have discussed in detail many things, including how we can also help and how Israel can help improve the Palestinian lives. It was one of the topics of the conversation. We have, of course, also supported the efforts that we have seen that were facilitated by Jordan and Egypt and the US. And of course, we have very much welcomed and supported the joint communiques that were agreed in Nakba and in Sharm el-Sheikh, and we also offered to contribute as much as we can. We have, of course, a strong economic support, but also we have things such as CSDP missions in Palestine. We have also taken part in the Munich format, which is an interesting innovation and perhaps in a way serves to replace the other format that is a quartet, which currently, of course, is not really working due to, I think, other factors that I'm sure you're aware of. And here, I would like to emphasize also the fact that we have not only been quite active in terms of our outreach, but also if you look at the public production since the beginning of the year has been very consistent and quite strong. There was a lot of statements on the escalation, but also settlements. Is that?
I think you've given a pretty good defense of where the EAS is right now, but I'm a little bit concerned about the time. We've only got about 25 minutes for the debate. So if you can just tie it up very quickly, and we'll move out to the audience now.
Or do you want to move out to the audience to allow, or because I just want to say a few things about what we do, which I think is probably the most interesting.
Yes, if you just tie it up pretty quickly, if you can, yeah, go on.
Okay. So that was one area of our work is support to de-escalation efforts. The other is working with the parties, and of course here I want to start with the Palestinian Authority. I mean, I have already said what we heard at the HLC was quite alarming for us. The conclusion that we make of it is quite clear. We have to really support and strengthen the Palestinian Authority, which for us is a very important strategic objective. We have been very consistent in that, and we have remained one of the really most important. I think we have remained the largest donor, and we will remain an important donor to the Palestinian Authority. I won't bother you with the figures that I have, but I also want to mention UNRWA, which was mentioned here as well. We are together with the member states, the largest donor also to UNRWA. We cover roughly 40%, together with the member states, roughly 40% of the budget of UNRWA, which is a very huge budget, which actually keeps increasing. Our problem is that we feel we are a little bit lonely here. So part of our efforts focuses also on other countries, particularly perhaps in the Gulf, and we feel they could step up the funding also to UNRWA. A couple of initiatives, and I want to come back to the FAC discussion with Prime Minister Steyer, because we discussed what we can do together also and to enhance the bilateral relationship. And one of the things that was agreed was the establishment of a high-level dialogue with Palestine. So that's something we are looking at when we are planning it in the autumn this year. So that will happen. That will be a high-level bilateral dialogue on the one hand with the High Representative and the Foreign Minister of Palestine. We also discussed things such as partnership priorities, where I think we are looking into it. We also discussed the full association agreement at the Foreign Affairs Council. What I can say there is that the discussion was not yet fully conclusive, but I think we have made some steps forward. And I think that's a discussion that we want to have again, but I think first we will start with the high-level political dialogue in the autumn this year. Very briefly on Israel, because it was also mentioned, I mean, last year we took a relatively big decision to resume the work of the Association Council, which, as you know, was blocked for 10 years. It was a very big political level decision, but we have simply assessed that it's better to have a platform for a frank discussion with the Israeli authorities, where we can discuss also issues related to the map and the Palestinian issues. And I think for us, the assessment is that it was a good decision, positive, and the High Representative himself was very engaged in that conversation.
Thank you, Vladimir. I think now we must move out to the audience and take points. I'm sure there are many of them. Thank you so much. Okay, the gentleman in front first. We'll take a packet of questions for everybody and then put them all together. So, would you like to go first? Thank you, sir. Gentleman just behind you.
Hello, Philippe Lefebvre. Thank you very much. I want to maybe follow up from that on the normalization sort of waves.
Please be brief if you could.
I will. For example, obviously Syria being more normalized now, the aftermath of the Abraham Accords, the Iran, Saudi Arabia normalization processes. Have these had a big impact on the Middle East peace process at the moment? And how do you view these going forward? Do you see any further developments in this wave of normalization in the region? Thank you very much.
Thanks. I think there was... Yes, go ahead. Go ahead. You had your hand up.
I don't need, but I just a question to the Palestinian representative: how the Palestinian Authority can work and that to, have control over the act, maybe the guidance groups, in order to have a more peaceful solution.
Thanks, and I'll take one more in the packet here. I see over there Bernard Philippe at the back. Bernard, former EU official.
Thank you very much, Jim, and thank you for this extremely stimulating session. I would wish to ask to have the views from the ambassador and from the parliament and from the EES person on Jerusalem. How do you see the future of Jerusalem? How to build something constructive in this direction? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bernard. Okay, I think time has come to ask the panel to react to some of those questions and the ones posed before. And I'll start with Evin.
Thank you very much. I need to go into 3 minutes, but thanks for all the, very, very important questions. First and foremost, just on the issue of extremists, I think the best way of eliminating extremists is to offer hope. That there is a hope for peace, that there is a hope for a two-state solution, that there is hope for the people in Israel and Palestine to live side by side in peace and security. I actually remember the first time I was in Palestine, I was very young. It was back in, I think it was 2006. I actually met a Palestinian general in Gaza. He was crying because he just got to know that his children were killed by Hamas. And he was saying of frustration that we are giving and giving and giving, and we are not receiving anything back. What do people do? They cast their vote on Hamas instead. And that, for me, that has followed me all through the years, actually, that we need to ensure that there is a progress. Because when people feel that there is no hope in peace, that there is no peace in sight, there is no hope, then the other options, unfortunately, they see more hope or whatever in that option. Nevertheless, wherever violence, extremism comes from, we need to, of course, we need to condemn it. That's unacceptable. But in a long term, we need to ensure peace and a two-state solution to ensure that extremism do not prevail. And then the issue of Jerusalem, I think it's very clear that the best way forward would be that both sides, that includes Israel, start to respect the 67 border, East Jerusalem, Palestine, West Jerusalem, Israel. That would be the easiest way forward. And unfortunately, from the Israeli side, we haven't seen any step towards respect for it. Even, I will just conclude with, even once again about the textbooks. I've heard many times that also that Israel is not in the Palestinian textbooks. I wonder where they want the line to go. Because if it's not 67 borders, where are the lines? Because that would make it easier for Palestinians to put Israel in the textbook. That would also make it easier for the progressive parts in Israel also to one day, hopefully, when they have power and are able to do that, put Palestine in their textbooks. Sometimes we're discussing issues and demands that we don't actually create ground for. And then also on Biden, I think Hussam has more to say on that, but I just, from my side, want to say that whatever US does, the EU cannot wait. There is right now a lack of global leadership, and it needs to be filled with actions. And the EU have an important role. We shouldn't wait for our friends across the Atlantic to take leadership. We should also be brave enough to fill that gap of leadership that exists. I think it's important that we do that as a Swedish social democrat, but I'm also Kurdish originally. I know very well what oppression, occupation does to a population. And if we really, really want a two-state solution and a peaceful one, then we need to offer hope, and a hope that also is being seen in a real progress. Thank you.
Thank you, Evin. Okay, moving on swiftly to, thank you very much for being here. I know you have to go. Moving on to Hussam, right? Maybe you'd like to respond to some of those points, Hussam, from the audience.
Many very important points, actually, starting with the Biden administration. There is, I think there is a very clear policy in the Biden administration to try and uphold at least the hope and the possibility of a two-state solution. They're clear about their opposition to settlements and the illegality of it and all that. But they have literally budged on every action they could take. And the most basic one and the most basic requirement is the reopening of the U.S. Consulate General in Jerusalem. That's the key pillar. And linking to the question of Jerusalem, because Jerusalem is the mother of all issues, Jerusalem is the key. Nakba did not fail because of any issue but Jerusalem. Camp David did not fail but of Jerusalem. All the talks, it's Jerusalem. People think it's the refugee issue or land swap and some border. No, it's Jerusalem. So there is no way the U.S. could play a constructive role without reinstating its diplomatic presence in Jerusalem, not by words but by deeds, and correcting and reversing what Trump did. So it's a disappointment. The Biden administration is a disappointment. Gaza ruled by Hamas, Islamic Jihad, the link to Iran and all that. Yes, there has been a coup d'etat in Gaza, and it is ruled by Hamas. But there is a unity of the Palestinian people, and there is a unity of the Palestinian political representation. The PLO does represent every Palestinian, and nobody contests the PLO legitimacy and representation, including Hamas. They don't. And therefore, for matters and issues of peace talks and for hopes and for engaging external actors, the Palestinians have entity to present. It's a very open wound, and we need to find a solution with that, and we need to bring Gaza back, unite our geography and our polity, and it's something that is an internal Palestinian affair. I do not believe that linking it to the overall peace process is very useful. Because some of the Israeli argument there, and they've used it in the UN, is just a conflation and a pretext. Who should we talk to? You talk to us. There is an address for the Palestinian people. Even Hamas says, President Abbas has the legitimacy to negotiate on our behalf if he offers whatever he agrees to a national referendum, which fair enough. I mean, it's fair enough. And when we wanted to convene elections in all of the Palestinian areas, we opened dialogue with Hamas, and we agreed to convene elections. And I'm not saying this is a small issue. It's a big issue. 2 million people are suffering from this. It's a huge issue. But that issue, Iran does not occupy Palestinian land or any other land. And we have had historic relationship with Iran, long in history, but the whole Iran model of proxy wars is affecting us negatively, including in Gaza and Hamas and Islamic Jihad. We welcome what happened in the region recently, very much so. We welcome this regional diplomacy. We welcome the restarting of relations, diplomatic relations between Saudi Arabia and Iran, and we believe this is a major step in the right direction, and we welcome the Chinese role in that. China is a major international power. It has to shoulder responsibility, and it has got to be good news that they are playing a constructive, positive role. What we need to go for is a multilateral peacemaking, not unilateral as happened for all these years. We need Europe to be in the forefront. We need the US, but we need China, and we need South Africa, and we need Brazil, and we need everybody, because this is, as we agreed, an international issue. And by the way, there is a lot of exciting regional diplomacy that I call on the European Union to really embrace and follow. Part of it because of the US withdrawal and the EU disengagement. And, I'm glad that the region is picking the pieces and the region is filling the void. with Saudi leadership, with Jordanian very strong diplomacy, Egyptian very strong diplomacy. And it's not just the Saudi-Iranian rapprochement. It's the Baghdad dialogue. It's the Jordan hosting of the dialogue on Syria and before it on Palestine. There is a lot of regional diplomacy happening here. Readmitting Syria. Do you have a better alternative? It has got to be that we, and I hear from our Jordanian friends that what happened in Amman was conditional, i.e. you get to this, we do this. And it's good because in the end, we have tried the other model for 10 years and look at the huge sheer suffering of the Syrian people. It's a catastrophe. So I am so glad, we are so glad that the region is finally regaining the initiative and taking its faith in its hand. And that has got to be supported. Now about how the PA to fight extremist groups. You see, this whole logic has to be called out and called off. What comes first, the chicken or the egg? In this case, security or peace or security. The logic of Israelis all along, if we have a bullet fired here or a stone thrown there, we have to wait and see how. No, it doesn't work this way. Security is not the condition of peace. Security is an outcome of peace. Let me say it again. Security is only an outcome of a peace that has been achieved based on justice. And even when you achieve peace that is based fully on justice, you will still have some kicking and extremists. You will have to deal with them. But to use that as a pretext and to deny people their rights because of this person and that person, this is a business that has gone on for a long time. And I tell you, it's a deliberate business. It's a business because the Israeli side is not ready to engage in the real stuff, the political stuff. In 1993, when we signed the Oslo Accords, there were issues. Even Rabin, who was not really full-heartedly committed, but even Rabin, who signed the Oslo Accords, said, remember there was the Golden Stein in Khalil, in Hebron, who killed 29 worshippers as they were worshipping in Khalil. And then there were a wave of attacks and what have you. And Rabin said, I will make peace as if violence doesn't exist, and I will fight violence as if peace doesn't exist. So we have to think about this causality between security and peace. And, you know, we don't live in a perfect world, but if we commit to a political solution, to fulfilling people's rights and legitimate aspirations, we will still have security issues, but we fight it together. Putting the horse before the cart is the last thing. The horse before the cart is the business that has derailed the whole Oslo process. The last thing is about the coalition, the conflation. There is a lot of conflation. I'm sorry, James, and I'll quit here. There is a lot of deliberate conflation. This whole textbook thing, the curriculum is a deliberate, very structured, organized deflation by an organization called Impact SE. It is hosted here in Paris. Most of their work is that. So they want your attention to be on that, not on the Israeli textbook, not on the Israeli daily incursions and violation of human rights, not on the settlement enterprise, not on the besiegement of 2 million people in the biggest open-air prison, not Jerusalem and what have you, but on that. And then the European Union have to dance on that, have to deliberate, many committees, the withholding of our funds, the same thing. The same goes for that. I want to end, if this is the last round, James, I want to end by quoting the title of today, Any Hope. And hope is a very good word. I really believe that hope has to be derived not from two sides discussing and agreeing, like the Palestinian side and the Israeli side. Hope has to be derived from our equal treatment of each other. Hope has to be derived from our ability to protect the system we built after the horrors of the Second World War. That is the rules-based international system, the UN and what followed. Hope derives when we equally apply these rules. Hope derives when we end this double standards, selectivity, as have been said about Ukraine vis-a-vis Palestine. Hope derives for everybody of us when we are absolutely serious about calling out any violation of these rules not only we call it out and we pursue it if it's done by our foes, like the case of Russia, but also by our friends like Israel. If we don't do so, then what we have built over the years is going to be undermined, will collapse, because global south does not believe anymore of the equality of application of international law, and we will not leave to our children a much hopeful world, and perhaps we would not have learned the lessons of the ugly past. So hope is there. Hope is that all together as a human family come together, protect our values, and do not put anyone above these values and above these rules.
Thank you, Hassan. And over to Vladimir to a reaction or two. And just a question. No, I'm sorry, sir. No, we only have 2 or 3 minutes left. So later, maybe bilaterally afterwards. Ask it again. So over to Vladimir. And for you, just one additional question on statements and declarations. How could you explain, I don't want to put you on the spot here, Vladimir, but how could you explain the message from Mrs. von der Leyen about a month ago to the 75th anniversary of the creation of the State of Israel, which did not seem to be terribly balanced and went down rather badly, I think, around the region. Is there anything you can tell us about that? Because I think it rather undermined a little bit the EU position in a different way. That is to say, between the institutions. If you don't want to comment, don't do it. I understand. Anyway, if you'd like to react to some of those points very quickly, we've got about 5 minutes left. Go ahead.
Okay. I'll maybe start with that because I think that's... so, as I said, I think in our statements we are always quite balanced and quite outspoken. That I can say for the statements that have come out from the institutions, also from the High Representative. The particular comment that you referred to was a video that was made by the President, who made it not for a speech at the UN, but as a congratulatory message that was directed to the Israeli audience. Was not really even posted as such, but was made online, but was a message that was kind of requested and was made to the Israeli audience to pass a positive message on the anniversary. So I think that's a way to explain it. It's not a standard statement that would have come from the EU. It's also not something that, as I think you would, considering how well you know the institutions, is not something that would have been drafted by standard diplomats in the EAS, but obviously comes from, reflects the political choice of the president. So that's maybe to comment on that. But perhaps I could comment briefly on two things. Again, on the textbooks and issues of funding. As I said, one of our, obviously, for us, it has really become a strategic aim to support the Palestinian Authority. We also know, I think, that what is the situation. Having said that, I have to say I don't really expect any difficulties in dispersing the money. The money for last year has already been dispersed. I don't expect any difficulties for this year. So I just wanted to comment on that. Otherwise, I think the textbook discussion can be a very long one. But on our side, in the institution, I think we have a fairly realistic view of what it is and what it isn't. And at the end of the day, we also base ourselves on a study that was made by an independent German institute, which did, I think, a pretty good job and has said that there are some issues which we now work on together with the Palestinian Authority, but there are also a number of myths that have been dismissed by the study. So I just wanted to say that. And maybe last comment on normalization, because it has been raised by some people. Of course, that has been a big theme. That also, I think it made many people think, because I think for many years we have repeated certain mantras about our positions, including the Land for Peace, Arab Peace Initiative, which we have always supported. You could ask various questions. Does it change that? Does it not? So I think it did generate a bit of thinking, I think, on the side of everybody. We have come with a very clear position, which again is also something that came in our conversations that we had also in the run-up to the Association Council. So if you want to know the EU position on normalization, it's Article 11 in the position of common position to the Association Council. That's the EU position. So of course, the EU has always said we are ourselves a regional organization. So if we see trends in various regions around the world where different agreements are signed that aim to foster regional cooperation, it's in our DNA to support that. I think that's pretty obvious, and you cannot expect anything else. At the same time, we have always said this basically, if I translate it, this shouldn't come at the expense of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So we have always said that the process would be always incomplete without the resolution of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So that has to be there, and that's our position. With that, also in terms of our support, financial support, we will always look at ways to include the Palestinians into anything that will.
Thank you. We have about 2 minutes, and if anybody's got a burning question they want to raise and didn't get it last time, please put your hand up. There are... No. Yes, you'll get your answer, sir. He wants... I think we got the question, sir. And last one is here. Barakat. No. Over to you. Thanks, Barakat. I think we better stop there and ask Hussam to quickly react and finish us off.
I'll start with the last. Until when you Palestinians wait, we are not waiting anybody, my friend. And we are doing a great deal. The people of Palestine, they have a lot to show in terms of resilience, stubbornness, and resistance. And you know what was meant for us in 1917 was exactly what happened to the Red Indians. What was meant for us is that we disappear. We become only part of history, not geography. And look at us, despite the biggest conspiracy, international conspiracy, huge machine. We are on our land, yes, oppressed, yes, under the biggest, regime of apartheid, colonial displacement and replacement, besiegement, checkpoints, humiliations, killings, name it. Imprisonment without charge, child imprisonment, name it, but we're still there. 7 million on the land and growing, and 7 million around waiting to come back. And we have done a great deal of noise and standing up for our rights. So I stand before you next to His Excellency, our ambassador here in Belgium, and I am the ambassador in London. This did not come because we were waiting for anybody. We snatched our rights. We fought for our rights. And we will continue. So we're waiting for nobody. But this links me to the other question about leaders and the lacking of leaders. I mean, Palestine could not make better two leaders like Yasser Arafat and Mahmoud Abbas. Yasser Arafat was the founder of our national movement, the father of the nation in every sense. And he managed to change our DNA and to push us towards a two-state solution. He started the revolution, so he had a revolutionary legitimacy. he had national legitimacy, he had elections legitimacy. If any leader in the world could do it, it would be Yasser Arafat. And then the one who actually signed the Oslo Accords and was able to enforce that logic on the rest of the Palestinians was President Abbas. And he has been very well known of his absolute solid commitment, principled commitments. Sometimes some of his commitments are not understood in the public, but he has been consistent over the course of his entire political career. Consistent. You hear him now, you heard him 30, 40 years ago. Not once he or Yasser Arafat budged on our commitments. So this is an issue of leadership. Yasser Arafat being besieged in front of the world in his own compound, killed by Israel. This is an issue of leaders? No, it's not. On our part, it isn't an issue of leaders. This cannot be resolved locally. Hear me out, my friend here. This cannot be resolved locally, i.e. leaving it to the dynamics between the Israelis and the Israeli political system and the coalitions and this religious group and that group and between the Palestinians. Because the starting point, the essence of our issue is external, it's international. It was started outside. That's number one. Number two, it is sustained externally. It cannot continue. Israel would not have been able to do all the mess it has done, all the violations, all the war crimes, all the crimes against humanity without the US political, legal, military, economic, and Europe. So it is sustained externally. Thirdly, name for us, please, one conflict that was resolved domestically. Where? Every conflict was resolved via heavy international intervention. South Africa, remember the anti-apartheid movement that sucked oxygen out of the apartheid regime and forced it to give equal rights to the South African native population. Northern Ireland, the Balkans, East Timor, you name me one area. East Timor was under the United Nations trusteeship. So don't tell me about leaders here and systems here. There needs to be, and there must be international intervention. Now, let me be extra frank here and tell you, I don't have much hope in the international official side, especially in Europe. I don't. And there are historic reasons for that, and I see some cameras, so I'm not sure if I should go into the historic reasons. Europe has been so bad to its Jewish population throughout history. Anti-Semitism is vile, and it's a real thing, and it must be fought and fought hard. The most heinous crime in modern history is the industrial-scale murder of Jewish people here in Europe during the Holocaust. Europe had an issue, but we are not an extension of Europe's Jewish problem. We stand alone as a European issue as well. So because of all that historic complexities, and I'm not going to go much further in it, the official Europe is hesitant. There was wrongdoing in the past, of course, and Europe must be in the forefront of fighting anti-Semitism. But conflating that and following Israel's success in making three things mean the same. Judaism, Zionism, and Israel. These are not the same things. These are three different things. And here is the real conflation that always happens. It is legitimate to criticize a government's policies. It is not only legitimate, it's our obligation and responsibility. From there, the hope I have is in the people of the world. Come to London and see the demonstrations, the youth of the world, the campuses, the change in the public opinion, and not only in Europe. Go to the US, see the latest opinion polls. I see the accumulation of what happened in the anti-apartheid movement happening with the people in Europe, in the region. Look at the World Cup in Qatar only recently. Forget about all the regimes. And we are working with the people. My colleagues and I are working tirelessly with the people, and we hope that the people will bring the governments one day to that field. With that, I end, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Hussam. I'm not sure we've managed to answer that question that's up on the board there, but nice to end on a slightly more hopeful perspective for the future. Thank you all for coming. and participating in the discussion. I'm sorry if we couldn't get around all the questions. It's extraordinarily complicated issue, as you know. We need at least a week, I think, if not more, to get through them all. But thanks for being here, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you. I saw the young people.